Hello, everyone. Hey, Miss
Hey, Sheila, how are you on this fine Wednesday?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Hey, before we start, I always got a question I want to ask you. So, Miss LaShay, do you think that we show up? Let me ask this question. So, are we showing up as our authentic selves in our relationship?
I think that's a really fascinating question because um, I know as women, we have to be so much to so many different people. And that's half of the struggle and half of the battle. I think of code switching. And you have to be this person when you're at work, the good employee. And when you're dealing with your family, and you have to be that person. So, I mean, it for me, I struggled with even knowing who is my authentic self, who is the real LaShay when she's by herself and at her best and her happiest, because usually I don't get to spend nearly enough time with her. I spend much more time playing all these different roles than I do
Mm.
being her.
Can the real LaShay please stand up? Please stand up. So today's topic, Miss Lachey, is simply called relationships, right? Because I think that what you just talked about is so important, right? The code switching, learning, who am I, right, in these relationships today. Uh, Before we go through that, though, I just want to let the audience know where we're at. We're elevating life, right?
Yes.
Elevate how to elevate in your love of self, Miss Lachey, how to elevate in your interactions with others, how to elevate in our focus and in our energy. And I want to encourage you guys to comment, to like, to share. We like interactive conversations. The more questions you ask us, the more the more enriched this conversation can be, right?
Right.
The more hearty, you know, this dialogue can be. All right. If you haven't already, make sure you join our Elevating Life group, subscribe to that YouTube channel. Hey, you guys, and make sure you join that relationship challenge that's going on right now. Only in Elevating Life groups. You can go to SheilaLittle.com/relationship challenge. And we got some gifts for you in that challenge too that, this beautiful woman put together for you guys. It are you, man, but while I'm talking about what you did for the people.
Oh, me. My name is LaShay Little, and I am the owner of Cherish Investments, which is a business development and marketing agency. And I help entrepreneurs to get to a marketable state by establishing a foundation to their business with systems so that they can work less in their business and spend a little bit more time working on their business, creating real scalable growth.
Sounds fancy. Sounds
I've been
fancy.
working on it.
Yeah. And I appreciate her. She is my business development coordinator. So if you guys are looking for a business development person, somebody who's going to challenge you to think outside of your business, hold you accountable, you definitely want to hire her. And of course, she's a conversationalist, so that's why she is on the podcast with me. And hello to Miss Danielle. You guys haven't seen her. She's on a contract. And who am I? I am your friend and expert leader in the field of changing lives, PhD candidate, right? 20 years of therapy. And what people might not know, Miss Danielle, is that I am a certified marriage and family therapist, right? And I work a lot in relationships, right? So today's title is just that, relationships. So you talked about code switching.
Mhm.
Where do we learn that from?
That's what's so fascinating, because I wonder if it is something that we just learn through life. I don't know that I've ever had anyone kind of sit down and tell me, but you learn very quickly from a young age that you can't be your quote unquote self all the time. And I think, even as a child, you're told, quiet down, be a little bit less, you have a little bit too much energy, hey, we're going over to your grandma's house, so be
Mm,
on good behavior. We're going to company's house. So be on good behavior. We're told all of these different things. And I think we just learn that being your authentic self is not something that is for every avenue, every platform, every place that you go. And I haven't really been able to come to a conclusion on whether or not that's necessarily good or bad. I think in some cases it is necessary, but I have found that as I go on this spiritual journey of learning who is LaShay LaRue and what does she enjoy and who is her most authentic self, I prefer to spend more time in spaces that allow me to do and be that and discover, her likes, her dislikes, and all that good stuff, and spend less time in the other places that require me to play a role or be a character.
Ooh, I think you just said something so powerful when you said when I was a child, and I think that that's where the story develops, and I think that we grow up and we don't know how to turn that off. Like when
Hmm.
I was a child, I had to conform and not be me. Like if I would talk too much, well, you talking too much. If I was too smart, then dumb that down, right? And
Hmm.
so as I started to get older, if I wasn't um, taught to be liberated or be myself or speak my mind in a family or an environment that was accepting of me, right? Then when I got older, I didn't understand, oh, now I get permission as an adult to do that. And so that same type of behavior moved in, that dependency. Does that make sense?
No, it
And
does.
now, like, I take that same mannerism into these areas, like, oh, do I give me permission to be me?
Right.
Right. And then it's like now I'm looking for spaces that's saying, oh, you get permission to be you. Right. And it's so interesting. And that's why I'm glad you said, like, when I was a child, because I think that we are looking for spaces that's willing to give us like this permission to
Yes.
say, like, oh, you can be you here, oh, you can wear your hair how you want it, and then we feel so liberated versus, and I don't even want to say demanding it, versus commanding our
Right.
presence, our space. And I have this acronym, is space, SPACE. I call this space, um I'm gonna put it as a ticker though. It's a and it's an acronym because I'm a social worker. So it it stands for something. It's your spiritual pattern that's authentically creating energy, right?
Ooh. Ooh.
Ooh,
Ooh.
right.
I like that.
And we think that when we are in our space, right? Our authentic space, it is our spiritual pattern that's authentically creating energy, right? And it's that space, and we're always looking for this space, right? Where's my space? Where's my space? And it's in you, and you can command that at any time, right? But we're looking for people to give us permission to be present in our space. And it's not really other people's permission to do that. It's
Right.
when we say, you know what, I'm tired of this. It's gonna be me, you know. And I think that's the transition that we're starting to see, people getting tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired, you know?
Yes.
And I think that that's
Yes.
the toxic mix of it though. Does that make sense? And that's
It does.
bringing more of toxic feel to finding our space. You know what I mean? So now it's the cutting off and the no negative energy and all of that. When truly, no, it's really you've been reared to not have a space because grew up in someone else's domain, your parents' space, your school space, your teacher's space. Does that make sense?
No,
And
it does.
now when you become adult, they were supposed to be preparing you for your space, but they didn't. They made you conform to their space, right?
Hmm.
And as you became an adult, you just continue to conform to these spaces, and it just starts to strip us, strip us, strip us. So it's just like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of being god dang sick and tired.
Right. And you know what? So you have that sick and tired of being sick and tired, but I believe there's also a level of blinders that you develop where
Mhm.
you don't even, again, like I said, it took me some time to realize I didn't necessarily know who my most authentic self was. I knew certain things that I kind of like, but that big question, who are you, darling? Who are you? Like that question, I don't know that I had an answer for that. And I know for me, I never even thought to really ask that question. My previous job that I had an incredible mentor, and she was really one of the ones who came helped me to come out of my shell a lot. You mentioned about how I am a talker, and I am, this personality, and I'm able to do things like this. But believe it or not, I suffer majorly from stage fright. I actually normally am more of a kind of recluse, but that happened from childhood, being told to be quiet, don't, we're going over go over other people's houses now, keep family stuff at family, and all of these different things that you just learn that I just avoid. As we've talked about this before in our other shows, just avoid. I don't have time to figure it out, just whatever. And I became that way. So we would have situations where, we would be in a meeting and someone would say something and it was like, and that's something that you talked about earlier too, about what is it that you really believe. And in your relationship challenge today. So I would have moments where we would be in meetings and someone would say something and I'm like, I don't really know if the numbers support that, but I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't say anything in the moment, or I would have an idea and it would be a really good idea, but I wouldn't say anything. I would wait until the meeting was over and then I would go into her office and I would say, hey, and I would tell her. And I love her. She was so frank and so in her space and so unapologetic and was just like, why are you telling me this now? Why didn't you say that in a meeting? And it was in that moment, I was just like, huh, well, you're right. Why didn't I say that when I had the opportunity? Why did I wait? And she was very much so a person who gave me permission. But that's the thing. I should have never needed permission. And I think the reason why we feel that way is because no one's having the conversation. No one is pointing out that you have these blinders on from being told, as a younger person, not to do this, don't do that. You act this way in this certain place. And it just becomes so much that just becomes the norm. That just
Mhm.
becomes the standard. And that's what it was for me. It was a normal standard to not speak up, to not say something. But I never would have considered myself to be a necessarily timid person. But I definitely would say I was a non confrontational person. So you avoid bringing up those conversations because you don't want it to be a conversation or a confrontation or a deal with the rejection because you gave an idea and what if they don't like it? So,
Mhm.
not really wanting to have that any type of negative pushback would just make me have avoidance and avoid it altogether. Now, definitely having had that experience of a mentor, of someone who gave me verbal permission and really allowed me to start thinking about things. Now you can drop me in any setting and I'm going to say what I have to say. If you don't like it, I'm sorry for you. Maybe I'm not your cup of tea and that's okay. That is completely okay. No love lost there. And that's kind
Mhm.
of why I say I look more for those type of spaces where I can be that person because I
Mhm.
never want her to feel small again.
Mhm. And I really love that you share your experiences. I definitely, I guess what came up in my spirit was the conformity or the uniformity of just society as a whole, right? We're women. How should women act? You
Right.
know, um, uh, as entrepreneurs, how should entrepreneurs look as a professional? I told you where people know I wear chucks and pearls, right? Before the president came and wore that, like I'm not a heel person. I'm a, tennis shoes, slack, and pearls girl. Like that's just always been me. And it's like, well, is that professional enough? Or I remember um, really being a professional and social worker, and working to articulate myself. And I'm like going to articulate myself, going to my client's house, and then speaking kind of like over their heads, like, and wearing the suit. And I was like, that's not me. That's not what I want to do. But in the setting, being told like this is what a professional looks like, and having to strip myself away from that. remember being told in as a as a woman, uh, aspiring entrepreneur that's in this entrepreneur journey, like what's that supposed to look like for Sheila in relationships? What's that supposed to look like? And it's just like, you know, let me find my space. And when I tell you that this dropped in my spirit one day, like, I'm gonna need you to find your space. And I was like, okay. And then it was just like, no, your spiritual pattern that's authentically creating energy. And I'm like, yeah, but everybody don't ain't gonna be spiritual like that. And then it was
Hmm.
like, well, for that, then just say specific patterns, right? And I'm like, okay, well, people need to find their specific pattern that's authentically creating energy, right? Because when you find that, it's an easy flow. And this is where we start to find relationships that start to migrate to us. When we start talking about the law of attraction, how do I attract the right
Hmm.
even conversations from the people who are currently in our life, from in our professional world, in our business world. When you start to sit in you, right, then life starts to come to you in a way, right, that I'm say effortless and not easy. So I'm not saying because effort is a word, right? That means that some action is being put in it, but it's not hard because you're in your space, right? And and so the question that I said, are you showing up as your authentic self? I think that we get so caught up in what's my purpose, right? What is my purpose? What am I put here on this work or in this world to be? And it's like, well, when you start to truly find your space, right? The things that make you happy, the you, I think your purpose will start to come to you too. Does that make sense?
It does. It definitely
That
does.
in the relationships that you want will start to evolve and revolve. And here's the thing, now it's gonna be a little bit. Whew. So, and when we start to find our space, I think even we can start seeing our relationships in this way. You have to say, some people is in your life for a season, a reason, or a life.
Yes.
And we can even start to see that happen in relationships and be okay with the season relationship, be okay with the reason relationships, and definitely be okay with the lifetime relationship. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
manage them because we'll know like, oh, okay, like the teacher, our third grade teacher, we love them, but we know that that was a third grade teacher and
Right.
she was only there for that season of our life. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then the lifetime relationship, we're not trying to overwhelm that person. We just know that they're going to be there for a lifetime, you know?
Hmm.
Like for me, that's my co-parenting relationship with my kid's father. I just know he's going to be here for a lifetime. Like there's no question about it. That's a relationship I'm going to have for the rest of my life. Why? Because I'm going to be a mother for the rest of my life. That's just it. So that's a relationship I'm going to have to work on for the rest of my life and whoever else come in, right?
Right.
So what do you think about that? These season, reason, and why do you think it's difficult for us to manage those?
Well, I think it's something that you've mentioned in a show before. A lot of times we give people these positions or these titles with no qualifications. We are
Mm,
assigning them roles within our lives without truly looking at what it is that they are bringing to the table. People always ask that question, well, what do you bring to the table? That's such a big part of pop culture right now, and the gender roles, debates, and all of that. What do you bring to the table? And people talk about very superficial things. They talk about how much money do you make? They talk about how many times are you going to cook a meal? That is not going to determine whether or not this is a person that is meant to be in your life for a season or for a lifetime. You have to truly look at the character of that person. How are they in emotional situations? How do they handle conflict? Are they someone who actually motivates and feeds into your spirit and your soul and gives you the promotion or the permission and emotional space to be your most authentic self? That is someone who will allow you to, hold them in your life and deserves to be in your life long term. But a lot of times we have temporary people taking up long term positions, and we wonder why we constantly deal with relationship problems. We wonder why we constantly have these issues with this person, but we've never actually taken the time to consider maybe this is how this person is. I always go back to the saying, when a person tells you who they are, believe them. And I feel like part of it comes from a lot of times how we as women like projects. Um, Even for the ones who say that they don't, we as women, I think, have a certain level of a natural instinct to want to nurture, to want to make better, to want to improve. Even if you have a great man, you believe you can make him an amazing man. We always want to be able to pour something into them to improve them. And sometimes, again, we're just imposing what our vision is for our partner, and we're trying to make this person fit that role. But if it's crazy for me to be forced to fit a role for this job, or because I'm in this environment, well, may I came to the realization that maybe that environment isn't for them. And it's the same thing for your partner. Maybe that's not the partner for you if you're having to do all this work to build a man. This is not Build a Bear workshop. These are real people with real feelings. And and I think that's the biggest thing. We don't really consider the qualifications that we have for these positions because we probably don't have any.
Mm. Well, you use some words like position. Oh, but I do like when you just said the long term positions, short term positions for long term something. I love when you said that. But you use some words like positions, these positions in our life. And I feel like, you went to school, you have a degree,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. I feel like, we have in some way automated or structified, I'm just making up a word, relationships. Like
Yeah.
we have taken something that is so organic as a relationship and we have put it in a box and we've made it so the word that comes in my spirit is demonstrative. Like how do we demonstrate this? You know what I mean? How do we make this happen? It's like relationships is the most one complicated thing. It's like how do you make a baby? We know how a baby is made, right? A man and a woman get together, make a baby, right? You know that, but still nobody knows what happens exactly when that sperm and egg get together. You just know that the sperm breaks the egg, but nobody knows when that spark of light happens, what actually happens, which is why it cannot be replicated, right? Because that is a divine thing. And I feel like we've taken the divinity out of relationships, the
We've taken the
organicness.
intimacy out of it a lot. And a
Yes,
lot of women complain about a lack of intimacy, but they fail to realize that they are actually playing a role in that.
yes,
Just like how you described, when it comes to the relationship, it takes two partners. You have to be present in that moment. If you only exist in that moment to go through your checklist, well, how are you truly engaged? And I use this all the time in business because it is true in the real world, in the digital world. It's just true. If you want to be engaged, you have to be engaging. So if you are not going to be actively involved into getting to know who this person is, to then determine, are they a temporary person or a long-term person? Because that's something that you mentioned in last week's podcast, that it's okay if they're temporary. Hey, temporary people are fun too. Temporary people have purpose. But where you mess up is when you get a temporary person in a long term position, or if you treat a long term person like a temporary person, you can end up missing out on a blessing. So I think we have to be
or
involved.
yeah, or and listen, and I just gotta come back and say this. But that temporary person could have just as much value to
Right.
bring you as a long term person if we just allow the space for them to exist how they could possibly show up. And this is the challenge because we are thirsty. I'm gonna use this word, Miss Lachey. We're so thirsty. You know what I mean? We've been deprived of so many things, Miss Lachey. We've been deprived of love. We've been deprived of attention. We've been deprived of our voice. We've been deprived of our needs. You know what I mean? And we just want it. You know what I mean? We just want it and we want it now, you
Right.
know? And one of the things I said today is that in that relationship challenge. And again, if you haven't joined the relationship challenge, I say go to www.sheilalittle.com/relationship challenge to make sure that you know, join that relationship challenge because it is phenomenal. But I was saying that we don't order relationships like when you go to the restaurant and you pick up your menu. You say, you know what, I'm looking for a best friend. You know what I mean? I need her to be this, 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 and then they deliver it to you like that. That's not. I'm looking for a husband, and I need him to be this, 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 and then you get them in a package and you unwrap them, and then the husband show up. That's not how relationships go. But somewhere in our minds we feel that way because we want it now. You know, it's more like, or even when we buy our furniture, how upset are you when you see the couch that you ordered um on the or the the TV box or the TV stand that you saw and but it come in like 50,000 pieces.
Yeah.
And you like, is
You got to
not
put it together.
ordered. You put it together, and it got all these little you like, I want the assembled already box. I want to just be able to sit my TV
You
on
know
it.
what? I think I love that you said that because so I always, I'm a planner. You know that about me. I like my plans. I like my list. I like my order. And I'm me personally, I am a spiritual person. I am a believer in the Most High. And I was always a person who would have my list and I would talk to my sweet baby Jesus. And this is what I'm looking for because this is what I want in my husband. And God, in his wonderful sense of humor, would send me that whole list. And when that list came, it was always like, wait, we left some stuff off. We forgot about some things. Um, Maybe I don't care about the master's degree and technically a two-parent home because that doesn't mean you don't have emotional issues that are
Right.
causing these other problems. And I just got to the point where I was like, wait, so maybe Alyssa's not the thing, Lord. Is that what you're trying to tell me here? Because you were giving me to the T, and I mean to the T of exactly what I asked for, but it every time it came it was never that it always ended up almost like you said it showed up in a bag of pieces and it was like wait I don't know what these pieces are but I this is not what I ordered I it's what I ordered but this is not what I ordered there's
Supposed
something
to look like.
missing here right.
Now, but I'm glad you said that because now I'm not saying that you need to fix a person. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it it requires tools, right? You need tools to put two people together. Does
I
that
was
make
focused
sense?
on the wrong thing, I believe. I was focused on these again, and this is the reason why I started off and I said that because I've been there. I started off with that superficial list. He has to have graduated. I didn't want just an undergraduate. You had to have a minimum of a
I got
master's.
my list
You
too.
had to, yes, like just all of these things. And that had nothing to do realistically with who that person is. I should have been spending time just getting to know this other human who's in front of me instead of You my husband? You the husband? Who the husband? Where the husband at? Husband got to be around here somewhere. You look like you could fit the role, and that's just looking for a character, and that's why you end up with the character, and you end up in some real life scenarios, and not
And
necessarily
and
all the way bad. Because I won't say that about any of my exes. I love them all in their own special way, and they had purpose because they did teach me a lesson during that season that they were there. But I was making the mistake of making and trying to turn a seasonal person into a forever person, and it just caused a lot of friction unnecessarily. I should have spent the time enjoying who that person is and getting to know just who that person is, instead of watching that person to verify, do they fit my ideal of a quote unquote husband.
well, I think you like even two steps ahead of the game, even thinking about who you want, because a lot of people talked about code switching early on. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times people not even thinking about who the person is more than who do I need to be for the person. You know
Right.
what I mean? Who do I need to show up as for this person to like me? If it's my friend, if it's, at work, who do I need to be to get this person, and I say hooked in. And then like once I feel like I have them, you know what I mean? Now it's the relationship begins. Does that make sense? And and then I feel like, oh no, now we done put together this, you know, go back to the analogy of you got the box, and now you put this thing together wrong. Now we gotta tear this whole thing down and we have to build it back up again. We realize, oh no, this ain't what we really wanted.
Right.
And now people don't know how to say that. Does
Right.
that make sense? So
Yeah.
now they're stuck in situations and friendships because now we've invested so much time, and it's like, and this ain't even what I really wanted.
Right.
And we're wondering why we're stuck emotionally or in a state of apathy or just feeling dead end in our careers or in our life or in our relationships because no, this is not what or I feel like I'm stuck and I'm not growing because no energy is moving,
Right.
because emotions are energy. And when you shut down your emotions, your emotional person, there's no movement. You know what I
Because
mean?
that's
You're
what
just coming
happens. They
back.
put up barriers, they put up walls as opposed to dealing with it. So it does block that energy when they put up that wall, they put up that barrier based off of this situation that took two. It wasn't just the other person. You had a role to play in it as well. You were trying to make something. And I always say, even in marketing, you can't make a person buy. You can't make a person anything. You can't make a person love you. And when you spend your time and you invest your energy into that, you're investing your energy into the wrong way, and you're not going to get it back and received in the way that you really wanted it. Now, this brings me to a question I have for you. Have you, I'm sure you have, read the book, The Five Love Languages?
Yes, I have.
So, what are your thoughts when it comes to that and how we love people and the energy that we give?
I'm glad you asked that question. Because I was just going to say, and I think that people don't even I think that people don't even understand that the only emotion you feel is your own anyway. So no matter how much a person may love you, if your energy and your emotions are activated, the only emotion that you're going to be able to feel is your own. And I'm going to give you the perfect example. That guy right now who's crushing on you and loving you, and he's like, "Oh my God," or the people are like, you know that they like you, but it doesn't activate you at all, like
Right,
at all, like you don't feel it, right? Why don't you feel it? Because you don't feel the same way, right? So it's you don't feel it. You just like, oh, thank you, that's so cute. But then you like, right? So if a person's feelings for you activated you, then you should be able to feel people's feelings. Like you, it influences you, it can lift you up, right? But you don't actually feel it. Now, let's change the scenario. When you actually are attracted to somebody, or you actually have an emotion, right? An excitement and a motivation. I don't know about you. Now I'm into somebody. Like the way I'm walking is different. Like I feel it. Like, you know what I mean? In my walk, in my talk, in my, like I'm feeling it. Why? Because the only emotions you can feel is your own. Like this is why we want to stay active in our relationships and not make that somebody else's responsibility. Right. And this is why you want to know what your love language is, and you want your partner to know that, because when they activate your love language, now you're staying in your active place. Like mine is affirmation. Bless you. Mine is words of affirmation. So, like, I know that when you activate that word in me, that activates a space in me. Like, if you're like, oh, you look nice, a great job, like that activates a space in me, and it's that way for me, right? Like, now, if my language is words of affirmation, but my mate's language is physical touch, and I'm telling him good job, but I never touch him, right? He doesn't feel loved by me. He's not activated at all. But I'm encouraging you all the time, right? So it's so important for you to know how your space in how your spiritual pattern or your space pattern is authentically creating energy, because you need to be creating the energy in your space, right? To keep you motivated, to keep you inspired, to keep you moving. And that's why it's so important for you to be in your truth, to be in your alignment. Does that make sense?
It
Because
makes
that's
complete
where your
sense.
energy is. That's where your energy is. And listen, your energy is like in a figure eight. That's this. Your energy is like infinity. Like it's, am I making it right? Boom, boom, boom.
There you go.
Constantly, right? And it's constantly ebbing and flowing, ebbing and flowing, ebbing and flowing. And we're recycling it. And I gave this analogy like we got matter, ice, liquid, gas. Ice, liquid, gas, right? So we taking something hot, solid, um, like a hard thing, like a thought, and we're taking it to liquid form, like a conversation, our words, and we're taking it to emotions, and then we're taking it back to words, and then we're making it back to matter, like a physical idea, like a business, and then we take it talking about it, making an emotion, and we keep moving our own energy though, right? Now the power in this is that our energy can connect to other people's energy, right? We can connect. But we have to activate our own spaces. And we're so trying to activate other people's spaces in hopes that our space is going to be activated. And this is why we have to learn this whole relationship. This is February, the month of love, right? The month of love. And I always say this, but love is the first thing that people take out the equation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So true.
Love is the first thing that people like, I ain't looking for nobody. Nobody gets my love. Now, I believe that everybody talk about God, and they say God is love. You know what I mean? So why is love is the first thing that we take out the equation? At least be loving you, and a part of loving you is being true to you, right? I ain't saying that this is I want to say easy work, and I really don't even want it to say it's hard. It is challenging, but again, that challenge is there to what? To generate energy, right? It's there to generate energy for you to move, to strengthen you, to cultivate you. So to answer your question, yes, I read the book. Yes, I believe in the five love languages. Yes, and when you're in that language, actually, it's a part of when I work with people, it's a part of my assessment. I have them do that, right? Because I truly believe in knowing thyself, right? And when you can know that, then you know like how to teach people how to treat you, right? And if I know that mine is affirmation, that it's not hard. I can just tell you, oh yeah, I like compliments. I love
I
it.
love that. I love that. I love one of my favorite things about you is that you put everything together for people. And for me, true change really starts with the conversation, because a lot of things we are unaware of. We don't even know it's something that we need to start being conscious of. So I love that you start with the conversation for folks with things like the relationship challenge, like this podcast, where people can hear and be heard. And then you guide them through that journey of self discovery, of healing from their past, of learning about their stories, and what stories are at play in their life, impacting these various areas, like the relationships in their life. And we've talked a lot about our romantic relationships, but it's not just about couples. It's also about your relationship with your family, your relationship with your mother, your father, your brother, your best friend, your co-workers, and most importantly, your relationship with yourself. And I think that that is a conversation that needs to be had. And right now, while pop culture is talking a lot about gender roles and high value men and high value women, and they don't even know what their own personal value truly is, because it is not your income. I can tell you that much right now with no clinical degree. I promise you, your value, your worth is not based in just your income, and you should not just identify yourself by that. So, I really do love and appreciate that you provide that option for them. And we did include the link for the relationship challenge. If you guys have not joined, make sure that you do, because it is an opportunity for you to get that bonus of a workbook, for you to get that additional bonus of affirmations. It's something that Sheila mentioned earlier on. It's so important to be conscious of the self-talk that we have going on. What do we really tell ourselves on a regular basis? And we are just energy beings, and the energy that you store within you is the energy that you are putting out there, and it is exactly what you are going to receive. So
Wow.
affirmations are incredibly powerful. And we have put together some affirmations for you guys that go along with this relationship journey, or this journey to better relationships. And we also have the Stop It Now workshop that is coming up here in a couple of weeks. We want to make sure that you guys save the date for that, which is going to be, when I bring up my calendar, the 20th for you guys. And I know Sheila has a lot to tell you guys about that.
Oh yeah, so the Stop and Now workshop is the framework that I put together, Stop It Now, that truly just focuses on what people need to stop doing so that they ultimately get the life that they desire and deserve. But what does that mean, Sheila? In my research, what I found out is that it's not so much what we're doing that's preventing us, but it's actually what you need to stop doing. There was a guy who did research. He went in and he did some research in his factory, right? And he noticed that, you know, as they were one, as they started to change behaviors, he was like, okay, all of this stuff is going on, but like they still doing this over here and it's costing us, right? And so I started to do that same method in my life. I started to do it in my clients' life. Understand that. And I started to do it with my clients. And what I realized is that, oh, my first phase, I've been working wrong. I need to help people stop doing some things. And so the stopping our acronym is just that. We look at 4 areas in your life that you need to stop doing. And yeah, and we buckle down on that over the week. And the last workshop was success. I got some great feedback on it, and I'm excited, to do that in our relationship. So
Yes, yes. So that's
it's
the
a
really nice
trademark. It's
thing.
trademark. It's
Yes.
trademark. So
And it's an
yeah.
incredible program. And I love that it is so moldable into all these areas in life that we need growth and we need development in. Stop It Now is truly something that everyone has an area that they need help in, something that they need to stop. Last month we were talking about procrastination and just in general living more fulfilled lives. This month we're talking about our relationships, because as social beings, relationships are a big part of our health, and a lot of people don't think about that. They don't think about how our relationships in our life actually have a major impact on our personal physical health. It's a real thing. You can, to say heartbreak, they call it that because it is something you can actually physically feel when your feelings are hurt. When you get into a disagreement or an argument with a family member or a significant other, you feel that. And just like Sheila said, when you are in love and someone is speaking your love language, you feel that too. So this workshop is going to speak to that. And next month we are going to go more in detail about that self-love aspect. And I also made sure I included that link in there for you guys because the list is already up for you guys to start securing your seats.
And while you was talking, I wanted to say this because I want to give an example what stopping now means. So you ever come whenever we come to transition in your any type of transition, what is the first thing that you need to when you come to a for to the end of a road and you looking to turn, what do? You stop,
You
right?
stop.
Before you make a left, before you make a right, you stop. You come to
You
a full
stop and
stop
you look.
and you look, right? um when you like do anything, there's a complete pause that you're supposed to take just to take inventory, but somewhere in our life we don't do that, right? We're not willing to regress before we progress, right? What we tend to do is we tend to accelerate and through the pain. We tend to put on more, do more, try to be more, stretch ourselves more, like, oh yeah, but I'm gonna do more, I'm gonna try harder, I'm gonna do more, I'm gonna try harder, I'm gonna do more, I'm gonna try harder. And then we convince ourselves that the pain I'm feeling and the stretching that I'm feeling and the stress that I'm feeling, it will go away so much so that we start to numb ourselves and convince ourselves that this pain is okay,
Right.
And that could be in our relationship with our money, that could be, and we have convinced ourselves that I'm gonna keep doing this thing, LaShay, and eventually it'll dissolve. And I don't know if you felt pain in your leg or in your body or whatever, and it's like eventually it's gonna go away. Like, and it's like, no, the pain is there to tell you something is wrong. Stop and take an inventory. So truly that's where the stop it now thing came from too, because it was like, wait, we need to stop. We need to stop, take a halt and do an inventory. And so 1 year, I literally stopped my life. I sat down for a whole month in August and I let everything fall, like literally. And I let everything just kind of the dust settled. And then I was able to, from that point, everything that I was scared of, everything that I feared would happen, I let it happen. Because me trying to continue to stretch myself and have all the pain and try to carry everybody and carry myself, I knew that even though I convinced myself if I kept moving, I kept moving, I kept moving, that it was going to dissolve, somewhere in me was like, no, you cannot do this anymore. You can no longer carry this weight. And so I don't know how I did it, but I was like, we finna sit down. And from August 1st to August 31st, I sat down and I just spent time with my kids. Didn't answer the phone, didn't do nothing. And I came out of that and everything collapsed, truly. But I didn't. And that was my fear, that when these things collapsed, that I was going to collapse, and I didn't. And actually, life started to get better. You know what I mean? Because the things I couldn't say no to, I started got the strength to say no to them. The relationships that were draining me, I started to build the boundaries up. I finally had the permission to say I ain't got it because I really didn't have it. It just was a reset for me, and before people get to that point in their life, I want to help them before you get there. Like, and a lot of us are carrying weight. And I'm not saying you carrying the same weight that I was carrying, but if you're feeling weight or you're feeling like life needs to transition or you made some decisions in your 20s, in your 30s, or even 30 days ago, you know what I mean? And you're feeling like, oh, I'm stuck with the decision, you're not. But let's stop and let's take an inventory of that decision, right? Let's see the stories you're telling yourself. Look at the triggers and obstacles and the patterns that has developed, and let's just look at it and see what's happening, so we can redirect your moves, right? And this can happen in anything. Yeah. So that's what came with my sister, right? So
I love it.
sometimes we have to regress before we progress. Okay.
I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. I agree wholeheartedly, 100% with everything that you said. Sometimes we really do have to take a step back and take inventory at what's going on in our life. I know for me, my moment was job related when I got to the point where my job was stressing me out to the point of tears. I was overwhelmed, I was emotional, and I really started asking the questions about wait, what is going on here? Because I had told myself for so long I love my job and I love what I do because it was true. But it became a story that I told myself over and over again. And at some point, it became not true anymore, but I was still telling myself that story. And when I took a step back and I looked around and I realized, okay, wait, I'm in a really emotional state right now. This does not feel good. My analogy was I felt like I was in an abusive relationship. I was in this relationship with this thing that I loved so much, but that wasn't loving me back. That wasn't pouring into my soul. And it was devastating to have to make that choice, to step away, to walk away. And I was very fearful. What is on the other side? I have no idea. I mean, what happens if the other side is not green? What if it's poop over there? I have no idea. Because I don't know. I don't know what's on the other side of this fence. But it was the best decision I ever made. It was the best decision I ever made because it was a decision that I made for my mental health.
Mhm.
And that anything that is related to your mental health, it's always, even if it's scary, it is going to be the best decision for you, even if it's uncomfortable. This too shall pass. It will not
Mhm.
be a forever discomfort, but it will lead to your longevity of your happiness.
Mhm. I'm gonna tell you guys a story that happened to me today. So I've shared this. My mom has some she's ill and she's having some issues or whatever. And I was recently so I do believe that we have spiritual contracts. So before we come here, we already know um, the life. So some of us say that God has already wrote the plan. Some of us say it's a spiritual contract and things like that. But I was driving her around today because recently she's starting to forget, so she can't drive. And so I'm driving her to the store and I'm just looking at her like, man, she's getting old. But I've cared for my mom since I was 13 because I started working at 13. So I was like, man, on at 15 and the people, like, so, so I'm like driving her around and I'm seeing her like, she's like, what's your number again? And I'm like, "That's my number." She's like, yeah. So she gets to the door and she kind of forget it. So I just get my purse, like, let me go in here. And so I give her my number. And so, it's like all coming to me like, well, like, yeah. So I remember this soul contract, right? Like I'm in a soul contract with my mom. And but I was reminded by it again from this video I was watching from one of my peers, and she had said that we get into these soul contracts and somebody is the heavy one and somebody is not, and that you guys made this agreement, right? And so it's like your mom made the agreement to come with this, to to come as the heavier one, and that you were going to take care of her, like you knew this before you got here. And as I'm driving, like I just get flooded with this emotion, and I'm like, man, I'm so grateful that I've been able to keep my word as a spiritual being, to care for my mother, no matter her state. And I just kind of was like, right? And I think, Miss LaShay, I know that because no matter what has went on, I veer from my space sometimes, but no matter, I've always come back to this space in life,
Mhm.
my space. You know what I mean? Like
My
I'll veer off
space.
a little bit, you know what I mean? But I always come back to my space. Even in relationships, I shared this story today, where I'm dating this guy and he's like, I know he's lying to me, but I liked him. He was cute. I liked him. And I knew he was lying. And I was like, I'm not gonna talk to you no more. I broke up with him. I'm not gonna talk to you no more. And I had said that before, and we had broke up a many a times. And I told him I was gonna talk to him no more because he kept hurting my feelings. And I've told a couple of guys that throughout my journey, and I end up talking back to him, and I'm in my 20s, early 30s. And the longest relationship I did that with was with my kid's father. We broke up, got back together, broke up, got back together. That was the longest relationship I did that with. Um, and so this other guy that I got with, it kind of started off and literally. soon as I said, like, I'm done, like, I can't do this anymore, and I wasn't a crier. I was just like, I'm done. I'm through with it. And he called me. He's like, I'm sorry. I love you. You're so important to me. I won't do it again. And,
Um,
I could feel myself like, okay, maybe maybe he could do it. And I literally saw my heart jump out my chest. It was like a little heart, and it had two legs, two arms. It went in my closet. It got the suitcase. It started to pack. Went up to my dresser. Started to pack all my clothes in the suitcase, and it went down this like spiral path. Like I could see it. Like and it didn't even like pack my clothes right. It just like walked away and the clothes was hanging out the bag and like my heart was like, "I see you. Like you see
mhm,
you to me. You know what I mean? And in that moment, I just told him, like, my heart just like packed up the clothes and basically he's like, it's sick of me lying to you. So I can't do this. Like, I'm gonna have to call you back. And I had to sit with myself. But it's moments like that that kind of let me know you off your space. You know what I mean? Come back to your truth, right? Now, like I said earlier, in my challenge, I did start back talking to him, but I negotiated that relationship with some non-negotiables. Still gonna believe you. Like I'm gonna trust my gut. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna deal with you in a way that's healthy for me, where I'm not believing you over me. You know what I mean? And the relationship eventually dissolved, but it's so important for me to stay in my space, in my truth, and I feel like honestly, that's why I've been able to preserve or stay healthy or, get the big downloads that I get in life because of that and even stay true to, who I am and have this voice. And, even my desire to get online and have like the Elevating Life, podcast or Build Shaping Solutions, the nonprofit or the Elevate Her Challenge or the Stop It Now workshop, all of it, truly comes from this space in me um, of creativity to be able to help individuals find their space and sit in it, you know, gracefully and bump out of it and give themselves compassion to sit in it again, because I think that's the journey. It's like riding a horse, you just be like kind of it could be a bumpy ride sometimes, but we could do it. And listen, a rising tide lifts all boats. And as we start to some of the accountability, your space is there for a reason. You know what I mean? And if you're not being true to you, you actually doing a disservice to the people around you. You know what I mean? And when we don't, I think that sometimes we don't even get that. So that lazy boyfriend that you see all that potential in, when you
mhm,
being and holding yourself accountable. You trying to hold him accountable to a job or mad at him because he ain't doing what he's supposed to be doing. But truly, if you had the boundary and you didn't allow him to do some stuff and you set you stood in your truth, in your space, you could probably be the the strength or the inspiration. Now that ain't fixing him though. You know what I mean? That's just being you. That's just you standing in you and you like, well, I ain't trying to lose her, so let me get my stuff together. That ain't got nothing to do with fixing him. That's just you being a rising tide and now his boat is lifted. That's a very different than trying to fix him and go write his resume and go and, working two jobs to pay his bill. No, but you standing in your truth saying, I will not pay your bills or sit and do all of this stuff and stress myself out for my kids, pay my kids' bills or, pay your bills or let you talk to me any type of way. And it's hurting me. I know that I'm off. You know what I mean? Because this is not the life that I know I'm supposed to be living. And so many of us is carrying that. You know what I mean? Because we haven't been taught anything different. Why? Because when we started off this conversation, we was taught to sit down, shut up, you know what I
mhm.
mean? And don't say nothing as little kids. And we
Right.
haven't learned how to grow from dependent kids to interdependent adults and learned that steps from how do I go from dependent to independent interdependent, and have healthy relationships.
I think that's perfect. And I think we've come full circle from where we started to where we're at now. And I think that is a perfect way to send our audience off. Do you have any closing words for them before we head out?
And that was my closing words. Look, we have to learn how to go from these codependent, dependent relationships, how to learn how to become independent individuals so we can learn how to have interdependent relationships in our life because that's the only healthy relationships that we can have, right? And that's in our jobs, that's in our families, and that's in our, especially in our romantic relationships.
I love it. And as always, do it in grace, grace for yourself and grace for those around you. So that's it for us today. Thank you all for watching. And until next week,
Love you guys. Till later.
bye.